May your strength be my strength. May my voice be your voice. May your love be upon all of us, God of all people. Amen. Please be seated. About 6 months ago, I was having a conversation with a colleague at UAB. This colleague is a practicing Christian who goes to a non-denominational church, a little bit more conservative than us. We were talking about overcoming challenges, and I said something like, "Oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry about it. Love always wins." He looked back at me and with surprise and a bit of disgust and asked me, "What kind of universalist crap?" Are we supposed to say crap, Marty? No? I mean, I said with a C. I mean, that's what he said. So, I'm just quoting. So, what kind of universalist crap is that love always wins? I tried to defend myself. I was a little surprised. And I said, well, this is my truth. And he gave me a reply that was very interesting. He said, Jose, if you are right, you and I are in great shape. But if I am right, you are in deep trouble. It was a troublesome comment. I knew exactly he was talking about judgment. I knew exactly he was talking about hell. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I looked at him and I tried to get out of this quickly, and I said, "Aren't we glad you do not have to make the final judgment?" And I walked away. I have thought a lot about the past few months. What motivated him to make such a demeaning comment? Was he being intentional? Was he trying to hurt me or challenge my faith? Was he acting out of his own sense of righteousness? Was he simply another example of bigotry? And I do not know, and probably I will never know the answer to any of these questions. But I do know one thing. From his answer, it was clear that in his eyes, he and I were not equal. That there is something he believes he has that places him above me. And that something is connected to his faith, is connected to his belief, and is connected to his own identity. This week, I have had several unrelated conversations, all of them circling back to the theme of identity. It is not surprising then that while preparing for this homily, I kept returning to how identity shapes the story of the Good Samaritan. The story is famous. All of us know it well. For it's mainly because of the well-known question, "And who is my neighbor?" I was asked by a knower. The question was asked by a knower of the law, by a lawyer, and Jesus responded with a parable. In the story, there's a priest and a Levite. Both of them ignore the desperate need of a left half-dead man in a ditch after being robbed. Some theologians try to justify the actions of the priest and the Levite by suggesting they were trying to avoid impurity by touching a possible corpse. They probably thought that the guy was dead. But what is very interesting about this is that we love to skip this part. At the beginning of the parable, it says that they were going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. So they were not going to the temple. They had been at the temple. They were going back. There was absolutely no reason for them to remain in that ritually pure. In Jewish law, Saving another person's life is so important that it overrides even keeping the Sabbath. The two men failed to follow the law. It's that simple. They made the decision, I don't want to get dirty with this one, and they walked away. But the Samaritan did something completely different. Martin Luther King Jr. once preached that probably the priest and the Levite, they asked themselves, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But the Samaritan probably asked a different question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? Two very powerful questions, which makes me wonder, which one would have I asked myself if I was in that position? Which one would have you asked yourself? The priest and the Levite walked by because their identity was rooted in status. Their identity was rooted in expectations. Their identity was rooted in self-preservation. They were whole and righteous in the eye of society. They were religious leaders. They were respected men. They were culturally clean. But the Samaritan, whose very identity was rejected and despised, chose to act from a different place. He acted from the identity rooted in love, from a faithfulness to the law implanted in his heart, as Jeremiah said on the fifth covenant. Two identities. One is the identity that the world assigns you and me, the identity that is shaped by power and by prestige and by egos and by pride. And the other identity is the one that God planted deep within you the moment God made a covenant with your soul. And which identity do you choose today? This is the third and final homily on the topic of Christian nationalism, a legion among us that distorts the gospel to divide, creating a class of so-called Christians who believe they are the righteous ones, who believe they were tasked with protecting the nation from those who do not think or look or believe or worship like them. Many of them believe that if they are right, then some of us are in deep trouble. Just like my colleague, they imagine that those who do not look, believe, practice, and love like them end up burning in the fire of sin and eternal punishment. And I believe they are missing the point, my friends. I do not think they are right. And I believe I am not the only one who believes such a thing. Last week, right after my second sermon on this topic, and of course my ego would love to believe that the reason why this person made this comment was because he listened to my sermons in YouTube. Presiding Bishop Sean Rowe, it would be nice if he was listening to my sermons. Presiding Bishop John Rowe called us to be an engine of resistance, not fueled by anger or fear, but by a deep commitment to justice, to truth, and the inherent dignity of every human being. His call is not about bipartisan politics. It is a spiritual imperative to stand against the forces of that dehumanize, that divide, and that distort a gospel of love. And I keep asking, How can a gospel of love separate us? How? How can a gospel of love separate us? How could the blood of the Lamb be spilled only to feed hatred and bigotry and racism and homophobia? How could that be when the life and ministry of Jesus shows us that love is not conditional, that love is freely given, that love and faith and hope and grace are for all of us to receive? Unending, overabundant, selfless, and forever. Friends, it is time to resist. As Carter Hayward outlined in her book, The 7 Deadly Sins of White Christian Nationalism, let us confront the lust of omnipotence by empowering one another. Let us reject the entitlement of privilege by embodying our shared humanity. Let us dismantle white supremacy by approaching the blackness of God. Let us challenge misogyny by empowering women and affirming gender diversity. Let us transform capitalism. Let us transform capitalistic spirituality by reimagining our relationship with wealth and worth. Let us resist the domination of the earth and its creatures by choosing to belong to the earth and its animals. Let us break the spiral of violence by choosing peace over and over again. I learned years ago that my best revenge against others is not to be like them. My best revenge against others is not to be like them. But then let us choose not to be like them. Not out of revenge, but because of identity, because of who we are as followers of Jesus. Let us remember that in every moment, with every encounter, we are invited to make a choice. Will we respond with the identity the world gives us, rooted in unsupported righteousness, separation, and self-protection? Or will we respond as followers of Jesus? Will we ask not what will happen to me if I stop, but rather what will happen to them if we do not? Christian nationalism tells us to fear difference and protect ourselves. But the gospel calls us to love beyond boundaries, to risk our safety and comfort for the sake of mercy, and to reclaim our truest identity, not as citizens of empire, but as people of God, bound by love and moved by compassion. That is the identity of that the Samaritan claimed. That is the identity that Jesus offers. And that is the identity you and I are invited to embrace again and again and again and again and again, every moment of every day of our lives. May we choose the identity of love over fear. May we choose the identity of compassion over comfort. And may we choose mercy over pride. And may we go forth as people of God, bound by grace, moved by justice, and faithful in every step, today and forever and ever. Amen.